I wasn't supposed to be back home. I had plans: grad school, moving in with my girlfriend, building a life somewhere far away from everything I used to be. But life doesn't always play by your rules. My breakup had cracked something in me, and when I packed my things and left that apartment in Chicago, the only place I could think to go was back to the house where I grew up. Or what was left of it. My name's Jordan. I'm 23. And before this story begins, I'd never kissed a man, never wanted to, never thought I would. But I also never expected to be living under the same roof as Damon. Damon wasn't just my mother's second husband. He was everything my real father never was. Charismatic, handsome, affectionate in a quiet, confident way. He had this presence that filled a room, like he didn't have to say much to be the center of it. I'd always liked him, even admired him. But I never thought of him as mine in any way. He was hers. Mom had met Damon 3 years ago, not long after my dad passed. At the time, I was busy with classes and trying not to drown in student loans, so I didn't pay much attention to the details. I met him once, briefly, before the wedding. He'd shaken my hand, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "I hope we get a chance to know each other better." That line stayed with me longer than it should have. Now, living back home, that chance became a daily reality. My mother worked long shifts as a nurse, leaving early and coming back after dark. Damon worked from home, some kind of marketing consultant with lots of calls and not a lot of boundaries between work and wine. Most afternoons ended with us sharing a drink. He called it bonding. I called it necessary. The first few days were normal, catching up, joking around, watching sports. But then it started to shift. Subtle at first. A compliment here. A longer stare there. "You've grown into a good-looking man, you know that?" he'd say. Or, "Your girl must have been blind to let you go." I laughed it off. I thought he was just being friendly. Flirty, maybe, but harmless. I told myself I was imagining it. I wanted to believe that. Then came the night that changed everything. We'd had a few drinks, whiskey this time. He poured more than usual. The TV played quietly in the background, something neither of us was really watching. I remember the way he sat, legs spread, arms draped over the back of the couch. Confident. At ease. Too at ease. He turned toward me, watching me in that way he sometimes did, like he was studying a question I didn't know he'd asked. "You ever feel like you're not who people think you are?" he asked suddenly. I shrugged, caught off guard. "I guess." "Why?" Damon leaned forward, elbows on his knees, glass dangling between his fingers. "Because people think they know you. But sometimes you don't even know yourself. Not until someone sees you." His words hung in the air, thick and charged. My heart started pounding, though I didn't know why yet. I felt warm, not from the whiskey, but from something else. A tension. A shift. "You okay?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. He nodded, smiling softly. "Just thinking. You've changed, Jordan. You used to be this shy kid. Now look at you. Confident. Strong. Sexy. That word. Sexy. It hit different. My breath caught and I laughed, awkward and nervous. "You're drunk," I said, trying to dismiss it, trying to stay in control of something I didn't understand. He didn't flinch. A little. But not that drunk. Silence stretched between us. I could feel it pulling at my skin. My stomach twisted, and suddenly I couldn't look at him. Then came the question. Quiet. Sharp. Dangerous. "Have you ever kissed a man?" I blinked, eyes snapping to his. His expression didn't change, calm, curious, but with something burning just beneath the surface. "No," I said quickly. "Why would I?" He shrugged, eyes never leaving mine. "Just wondering." I stood up too fast. My head swam. "I should go to bed." He stood too, but didn't step forward. "Jordan." "What?" "If I asked you to kiss me, just once, what would you say?" My chest tightened. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He didn't press. Didn't laugh. Just nodded and said, "Good night." I left the room shaking, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous: curiosity, intrigue, the smallest ember of something I didn't want to name. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, reliving every second. His voice, his eyes, that damn question. I wasn't gay. At least, I didn't think I was. But that night, Damon asked me for a kiss. And I didn't say no. The next morning, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I avoided Damon. I went for a long run, skipped breakfast, buried myself in job applications I wasn't even serious about. Every time I walked by a mirror, I couldn't look at myself. I kept hearing his voice, that question. If I asked you to kiss me, just once, what would you say? And what haunted me wasn't the question. It was the silence I gave him in return. When I finally saw him that evening, he acted like nothing had happened. Calm, easy. Like he hadn't just cracked open something inside me and left it pulsing in the dark. We made small talk. He asked about my run. I nodded, mumbled something. My hands trembled the whole time. Later that night, my mom called from her night shift at the hospital. Damon passed me the phone and stepped outside to smoke. She was cheerful, tired, and completely unaware her son was spiraling over her husband. I hated myself for that. I hated him, too, until I realized I didn't. That's what scared me most. When I hung up, I found him in the backyard, sitting under the porch light, cigarette between his fingers, smoke curling like a secret. "You don't have to be weird with me," he said without looking at me. "I'm not. You are." He took a drag. "But I get it." I leaned against the railing, arms crossed. "What is it you think you get?" "That you're scared," he said, finally turning to look at me. "But maybe a little curious, too." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He crushed the cigarette under his heel and stepped closer. "Look, Jordan. I'm not trying to mess with your head. You want me to back off, I will. But don't lie to yourself about what's going on here." "What is going on?" I asked, voice low. He smiled, that calm, infuriating confidence still in place. "Something you're not ready to name yet. That's okay." And then he walked past me, brushing my shoulder just enough to leave my skin burning. After that, it became a dance. Subtle. Dangerous. The air between us stayed thick. We moved around each other like magnets, trying not to touch, knowing it was only a matter of time before we snapped together. One night, maybe a week later, he invited me to watch a movie with him. My mom had picked up a double shift. He made that fact a little too obvious. The couch felt smaller than usual. The room warmer. Halfway through the movie, he handed me a beer. I took it, even though I'd already had one. We didn't speak. We just sat, shoulder to shoulder, the movie flickering shadows across our faces. I felt every inch of him beside me. His breathing, the way his fingers curled around the bottle, the slow stretch of his leg until it brushed mine. I didn't move. Neither did he. And then he said it. "You don't have to be anything for me, Jordan. Not straight. Not gay. Not anything." I turned my head. "Then what do you want from me?" He looked at me then, really looked, like he was peeling me apart with his eyes. "A moment," he said. "Just one." I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just watched him as he leaned in, slowly, giving me all the time in the world to stop him. I didn't. His lips brushed mine, tentative, warm, not asking for permission but not demanding either. It wasn't rough or desperate. It was soft, gentle, electric, and I kissed him back. Only for a second, maybe two. But I did. When I pulled away, I was breathing hard. My hands were fists in my lap. My skin was on fire. "Fuck," I whispered, more to myself than him. Damon didn't look smug. He didn't gloat. He just reached out and touched my knee. "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to figure it all out right now." I stood, needing space, needing air. "I don't know what I'm doing." "You don't have to know," he said, still seated, voice calm. "You just have to feel." I left the room without another word. Back in my bedroom, I closed the door and locked it, Not because I thought he'd follow me, but because I didn't trust myself. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers on my lips like they still belonged to him. That kiss wasn't violent. It wasn't forced. It was deliberate, quiet, and careful. And that's what made it worse. Because it didn't feel wrong. It felt inevitable. I wasn't gay. At least, that's what I used to say. But I also used to say I'd never kiss a man. And now I had. Willingly. The first time we slept together, it wasn't planned. It was a thunderstorm kind of night, moody, charged, full of things waiting to crack open. My mother had been called in for an emergency double shift. Damon cooked dinner, poured wine like it was a ritual, and sat across from me with that look again. The one that said he saw parts of me I hadn't dared to admit existed. I'd stopped trying to pretend. Around him, anyway. After dinner, I found myself on his bed, not mine. I didn't even remember crossing the hallway. I just remembered the sound of his voice low in my ear, his hand on my chest, his mouth on mine, and a heat that surged through me so strong it left no room for guilt. It wasn't fast. It wasn't frantic. It was slow, deliberate, worshipful. He touched me like I was something sacred, and I let him. Afterward, we lay tangled in silence, skin to skin. My breath was still uneven. My mind was reeling. "I can't believe that just happened," I murmured. "You can," he replied softly. "Because you wanted it as much as I did." He wasn't wrong. But that didn't make it easier. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of stolen moments and sleepless nights. We became careful, calculated. My mother moved around the house blind to it all, smiling, humming when she cooked, pressing soft kisses on Damon's cheek while I looked away. The guilt was a living thing, a weight that pressed harder the longer we kept going. But the sex kept happening. So did the whispers in dark hallways, the brushes of fingertips under the dinner table, the texts that said, "Come to my room." Quietly. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. This wasn't just experimentation. This was an affair. And I was in too deep to pretend otherwise. "You know this can't last," I told him one night after he kissed me breathless in the laundry room. "I know," Damon said. "But I'm not ready to stop." "Do you love her?" I asked, even though I didn't want the answer. He paused. "I love who she thinks I am." That answer gutted me. Because I was starting to feel the same way about him. Damon wasn't just a forbidden escape anymore, he was comfort. Warmth. A fire I couldn't stop walking into, even when it burned. But every time I heard my mother laugh, my stomach twisted. Every time she told me how lucky she felt to have Damon, I wanted to scream. Once she hugged me in the kitchen and said, "I'm so glad you two are getting along. It means the world to me." I almost told her then. But I didn't. I kissed her cheek, swallowed the bile in my throat, and went back to pretending. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon. My cousin Eli dropped by unexpectedly, wanted to borrow tools. I was upstairs in Damon's room, half-dressed, laughing while he tried to convince me to stay the night in his bed for once. We didn't hear the door. Eli walked in. Just enough to see the scene. The shirtless stepfather, me on the bed, too comfortable, too intimate. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened, and then he was gone. Panic exploded in my chest. "He saw us," I gasped, grabbing my shirt. Damon stayed unnervingly calm. "We'll deal with it," I snapped. "How?" "He's going to tell everyone." Damon stepped closer, touched my face. "Jordan, breathe. We knew this wouldn't stay a secret forever." I yanked away. "This isn't a secret. It's a betrayal. You're married to my mom. She trusts you." "I trusted you." His face flickered, just for a second. "You're the one who came back for comfort. Don't rewrite that now." I froze. "Are you saying this is my fault?" "No," he said, voice softening. "I'm saying it's ours." But the damage was done. Something inside me cracked. That night, I didn't go to his room. I didn't answer his text. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, haunted by Eli's face, by my mother's laugh echoing from the hallway, by the way Damon had said, "You came back for comfort." He wasn't wrong. But he wasn't right either. We'd built something real, but it was wrapped in lies, draped in shadows, impossible to explain or justify. I didn't know if I loved him. Not fully. But I knew I felt something. Something that mattered. And I also knew, eventually, it was going to destroy everything. The fallout didn't wait long. Eli didn't confront me directly. He didn't call or text. He just told his mother, who told my aunt, who told my mother. It was a Tuesday morning. I just stepped out of the shower when I heard her voice downstairs. Sharp, broken, nothing like her usual calm. I rushed down, towel around my waist, to find her standing in the living room, phone still in her hand, tears in her eyes. Damon stood at the foot of the stairs, barefoot, wearing the same shirt he'd worn the night before. She was looking at him like he'd become a stranger overnight. "Tell me it's not true," she whispered. His silence said everything. My heart dropped. I wanted to speak, to explain, to throw myself into the fire and take the blame. But the words didn't come. Maybe part of me wanted it to be over. When her gaze turned to me, I saw it. The hurt. The betrayal. But most of all, the disbelief. "Jordan?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You?" I nodded. Just once. She didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She just closed her eyes like if she shut them long enough, she could erase us. "I need you both out," she said, so quietly it cut deeper than any yell. "Now." And just like that, the illusion shattered. Damon didn't fight her. He walked upstairs, packed a bag, and left. I did the same, moving like a ghost through the hallways of my childhood home. The last thing I saw before the door closed behind me was the family photo on the wall. Me, her, and Damon, smiling like we believed in the lie. We ended up at a cheap motel near the edge of town. 2 beds, 1 flickering lamp, and silence thick enough to choke on. Damon sat on the edge of the mattress, rubbing his temples. I never wanted to hurt her. I stared at the ceiling. "But you did. So did you." "I know." He looked at me then, eyes bloodshot, face drawn. "Do you regret it?" That was the question I'd been running from. Through every kiss, every lie, every stolen moment, I hadn't dared ask myself that. "No," I whispered. "I regret how it happened. But not that it happened." He nodded slowly, like that was enough to justify everything. Maybe to him it was. But for me, something had shifted. That night, he reached for me. His hand still knew every part of me, but I couldn't give him what he wanted. I turned away. "I can't do this anymore," I said quietly. "Why not?" "Because this isn't love," I said, voice shaking. "It's escape. It's heat. But it's not a life." Damon didn't argue. He just lay back, eyes to the ceiling, as if trying to figure out how we got here. I moved out the next day. No dramatic goodbye. No final kiss. Just a quiet exit and a long drive to nowhere. I couch surfed for a while. Stayed with friends who didn't ask questions. Picked up odd jobs. Tried to feel human again. Weeks passed before my mother called. I stared at her name on my screen, heart thudding, unsure if I deserved to answer. But I did. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her voice was calm. "Are you okay?" I swallowed hard. "Not really." "Me either." Long pause. "I'm not calling to forgive you," she said. "I don't know if I can. But I raised you better than this." "I know," I said, barely holding it together. "And I'm sorry. Not just for what I did. But for not telling you the truth." She sighed. "He was my husband. And he was something else to me." "I know," she said again. "That's the part that hurts the most." We didn't talk long. There was no resolution. Just raw honesty and the beginning of something like healing. Months later, I saw Damon again. It was accidental, at a bookstore of all places. He looked older. Tired. Like life had finally caught up to him. We locked eyes across an aisle. He smiled faintly. "I've been sober," he said. "Since the day she kicked me out." I nodded. Good. You look stronger, he said. I am. He didn't ask to rekindle anything. He didn't ask to touch me. He just said, I hope you find someone who sees you the way I did, without shame. I didn't reply. I just walked away. Not out of hate. Not out of regret. But because it was over. That chapter of my life, messy, raw, painful, had taught me something. That identity is fluid, that truth is hard, and that sometimes the only way to know who you are is to break the version you were pretending to be. I wasn't gay. I wasn't straight. I wasn't anything I could define in a sentence. But I was me. And for the first time that was enough.